This is Chris, one of my favorite turners, and we are here today to talk about OB Shine Juice. I get asked this question a lot whenever I post a shiny piece. What is the finish? How do I make it? How do I get it? And so today, I think we're just hoping to walk through a little bit of what the base recipe is, how you prepare your pieces, how you apply it. And Chris is the best at this finish that I know. So I selfishly wanted to have him on so that I could see what he's doing that's different from what I do so I can improve. And it just felt a little bit selfish to keep that information for myself. So here we all are. So yeah, let's hop right into it.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I've prepared a piece here. It's sanded to about 320. It's nothing super special, and I have composed what is the base recipe for OB Shine Juice, which is 1 part shellac, 1 part boiled linseed oil, and 1 part denatured alcohol. And that's really the base recipe. I'm not using anything special here. This is like off-the-shelf shellac that you can get at your local hardware store. This is not some special magic dust that you can only get on certain British Isles or what have you. So the process that I usually use for finishing this is, first, you're going to want to shake it because it will separate. I'm going to turn the speed on my lathe down to nearly the minimum. And I'm going to use a blue shop towel like this. And I saturate the shop towel, and then I'm just going to start applying a light initial coat. And really, all I'm looking to do here is this I kind of think of as like my sealing coat, because I'm not using any sanding sealer on this piece. So I'm basically just trying to seal the wood up with the shellac. And don't be afraid to be a little bit heavy on this coat. One of the best things about this finish is that because it's full of denatured alcohol, it tends to flash off reasonably quickly. So just to give a sense of where we are here. So this is a nice sealing coat of shellac. You can see we're bringing out the natural chatoyancy in the wood already. And I'm going to increase the lathe speed just a little bit here. Help that denatured alcohol flash off just a little bit. I'm going to apply a bit more of the juice to the pad. And I'm going to start applying what will be my second coat. And one thing that's really helpful, or that I find really helpful, is to look at the reflection of your shop light. That'll give you the most insight into how you're actually doing with this coat. If it looks really diffuse, you can just sort of see like a halo or sort of a cloud. It means you need to either apply a little bit more pressure or just get another coat of the shine juice going. And now, Chris, one thing that I would love to hear from you. I have struggled getting this finish to work on pieces that are bigger than about 8 inches across. Do you have those same struggles?
No, not generally.
Fair enough. Well, I think I'm going to be dipping into your recipe later on in the stream then.
What is it that gives you trouble with doing the larger pieces?
It seems to come out a little bit streaky for me the larger my pieces get. And I don't know if that's because I'm not adjusting my lathe speed accordingly, or if... I don't know. It's entirely possible that I'm also just breezing because I'm trying to finish it in the same time that I would like a 5 or 6 inch piece.
So one of the things I was going to talk about is how variable the recipe is and kind of what the effect the different components actually have in it. So if you're having trouble with it coming out streaky, that could mean a couple things. Usually it could mean you're just applying it too lightly. You're not saturating your towel enough. But it also could mean that you're flashing off too quickly and the shellac is setting before you've had a chance to smooth it around evenly. And that could have something to do with the oil, which is like the boiled linseed is only just a lubricant in this recipe. Where the alcohol is a carrier or a thinning agent, and the shellac is doing all the work. So it sounds like you could be either going too lightly, like not applying enough, or maybe it's flashing off too quickly, and you want to adjust your recipe a little bit.
Interesting. Okay, I'm definitely gonna have to try that. Okay, so I put what I would call 3 coats of this on. So let's stop the lathe and get a look at how we're doing here. And I think that's a pretty good finish. I mean, I'm not getting an absolutely perfect reflection of the LEDs, but I'm pretty satisfied
Really
with
good
that
for
overall.
gear, and that's a gorgeous piece of wood. So,
Yeah, it looks like we got lucky on the first take. That's great.
how
I'll
many
put away my other 9 backup bills.
how many coats do you generally do, and what kind of timing do you use?
It varies depending on the wood. The harder a wood is, I tend to use fewer coats because I feel like it soaks up less of it. Like for example, if I'm doing a softer maple, I tend to do like 2 saturation coats just to make sure that the pores are soaking up enough shellac that I feel like I have a nice base
Mhm.
underneath my what I consider like the hardening coats.
Yep.
Um, a piece like this is Atamo. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Um, it's not a super hard wood, but as you can see, it's naturally pretty chatoyant. So I would probably go like 2 more coats here and then call it a day. What would you say?
And so, yeah, I generally aim for 3, 4 coats on almost anything that I do. But
Hmm.
do you give it time in between? Because I usually will lay down the first and second coat, like much like you did, back to back, pretty much. But then I
Hmm.
always leave a good gap in between to let the first few coats set up and completely harden and cure.
Nice.
Or I end up getting you can get pulling in your shellac, like you'll get. I get maybe even streaks as well, but I tend to get pulls in the shellac where it's going on a bit too much, and the base coat's still sticky. So then it kind of
I
leaves
see.
like almost like drip marks in the shellac.
Interesting. So how long are you leaving in between coats at that point?
So the like I said, I'll do the first couple pretty much back to back. I might wait a minute or two in between. I might do it like a actually I should almost call one sort of like you did, like a sealing coat. So like my first one, I just slap that on there, and that is like you do to seal the wood as best as I can. Then I
Hmm.
do 2 proper coats, kind of like what you did. Then I'll wait anywhere from several hours to the next day before I add the third and final coat, or fourth and final coat, depending on how many I'm going.
Okay,
Giving it
I'm
that
I'm
time to,
definitely gonna have to try that then.
yeah, giving it that time to cure, you'll notice you'll have a lot less trouble when you go back to add those other coats. You won't get pulling, streaking should be a lot less of an issue. It'll feel like you're working on glass, like on a finished piece already. If it feels
Well,
sticky,
that's
if it feels sticky at all, you're not giving it enough time.
Well, that's already a super hot tip. Okay, then. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this piece off the lathe. And I was hoping that you could talk us through some of the variations to the sort of classic 1-to-1-to-1 denatured alcohol to shellac to boiled linseed oil recipe that you
So
used.
as I mentioned, like before, we were just chatting before the stream started here. I'm in Canada, so I can't get denatured alcohol. I mean, I can. It's just it's hard to find. It's more expensive. It's not easy to come by. So years ago, I settled on methyl hydrate, which is it's another type of alcohol with basically a poison in it to prevent people from drinking it, and it works pretty much the same as a thinner or carrying agent. Um, on top of that, I generally use like same as you. I'll use Zinsser shellac, and I prefer. I know this sounds odd, but I prefer a waxed shellac or a non de-waxed shellac, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Sometimes I actually I generally mix my own shellac to use for thinners and other things.
Right.
So, but I'll usually lean towards the wax. I find I get a better result with Zinsser. I don't know if you know the difference between Zinsser shellac and Zinsser sealer. They're both shellac. Zinsser, the regular stuff, is like I think it's basically like a 3 pound cut of shellac.
Right.
Um, on like it's still waxed, and the sealer is basically like a lighter 2 pound cut of shellac, and it's a de-waxed shellac. Um,
Interesting.
Again, I lean towards the waxed when it comes to using this. I find I get a better result. I tried for years using my own pre-mixed shellac that I make, and I would never get the result that I wanted. And then the other component that I switch out is I don't use boiled linseed oil. All of my products I like to be, 100% pure, all natural. If I can use a natural product over a non-natural product, I would prefer that. Boiled linseed has drying agents in it, which generally speaking is not a big deal since we're not actually using it as a finish. We're actually only using it as a lubricant. But I found walnut oil. I use roasted walnut oil that I buy cheap. It's basically salad dressing. I don't pay the big bucks for the Mahoney's or anything like that. Just regular off the shelf walnut oil, which works great as a finish on its own. And again, all I'm using it for is a lubricant in this mixture. When it comes to actual like ratios, I prefer more shellac. So my recipe is actually more like 1.5 parts shellac to about 0.5 parts oil and then 1 part alcohol, or in my case, methyl hydrate.
I see. So does that make for a thinner mixture? I mean, it seems like without pulling that extra oil out of it, it seems like it would make it easier to saturate the rag, but that it would also flash off a little bit more quickly in comparison.
It goes down thicker and quicker for me. I don't like to sit there and do 20 coats when I can do it in just a couple of coats. So, and again, as I mentioned earlier, it's variable. So if you find you're having issues with it, it's going too quickly, add a bit more oil or add a bit more alcohol so it flashes off slower. If you want to go down thicker, add more shellac. Like, it's sort of like cooking. The original recipe is great, but you don't have to, be locked into it. You can definitely play around with it. At this point, I eyeball it. So I have a couple of bottles that I just reuse over and over. I just fill it up to a certain point with shellac, maybe that much oil, and then I'll top the rest with alcohol. And
I do something pretty similar where I don't even want to get my hands dirty, so I'll wait until the bottle's empty. I'll literally just squeeze it until all the air is out of it, and then suck up about a third of a portion or thereabouts of shellac, and then I can pour my other portions in because the shellac comes in this paint can thing, and I don't really like dealing with it that much.
That is actually really clever. I hate pouring shellac. I always make a mess, so I'm going to try that next time.
That's the worst. Yeah. Oh, so for other folks, so in California, we got rid of denatured alcohol relatively recently. And so I was looking for alternatives a couple of years ago, and I was looking, I started using isopropyl alcohol at very high concentrations, like 95+%. And I found that it would not dry. Like, for whatever reason, it just does not evaporate quickly enough. So I just wanted to say that
water, like whatever's not alcohol is water in there, I think.
Yeah. And even at high concentrations, I was able to, I'm not going to talk too much about how, but through a friend who works in material sciences, I was able to procure some that was listed at like 99.5% for use in scientific applications.
And that works better.
And even that reason, I was having a lot of trouble keeping it from getting sticky in between coats. I'm sure that chemists can jump in here and tell us that there's probably like an evaporative coefficient of whatever the chemical itself is, but it seems to be a lot slower than the denatured alcohol. So I really struggled with it personally.
Interesting. Can you get methyl hydrate?
I haven't looked, but I'm pretty sure that I could find some. One of the lucky things about being in Silicon Valley is you occasionally run into people who have access to storerooms full of this kind of stuff. So even if it's not available on the shelves, I might have to try to find some. But
here
it is tough in places where DNA is not super widely available.
Here, methyl hydrate is like crazy cheap. I buy it by like a couple gallon jug for maybe $11-12 or something. So,
oh, that's awesome! Very cool. Well, that definitely beats the Mahoney walnut oil at what, $85 a gallon. Like, at least there's a cheap component in there.
Yeah, I avoid that. Like I said, I can buy roasted walnut oil from the grocery store. I get about a liter for $14 maybe. I think it's cheaper than that, maybe $12. I forget. But it's It's not expensive. There you go.
David Gilbert in the chat says methyl hydrate is methanol or wood alcohol. I feel like I've seen that at our Home Depot, so that might be available. So if you're in a place that doesn't really allow denatured alcohol, it is sometimes also sold around here as camping fuel. Yeah, exactly. So maybe they have a regulation against selling it as is, but you might get like camp stove fuel. Well, Chris, this was awesome. I'm going to go ahead and put this up for everybody who didn't get a chance to actually join the live stream, but I just wanted to say thank you for taking time out of your day. I'm going to try some of your tweaks on the recipe to see if they work a little better for me, and I have some bigger pieces that could use some attention that I've been waiting for on this. So just wanted to say thanks again.
One more thing to add is your seal coat. That's extremely important. So I seal with sanding sealer, followed by an abrasive paste. And that gives me a solid surface to work off of. But before I finish that, I'll wipe it down again with sanding sealer. I use the sanding sealer almost like a cleaning agent, so I have a nice clean surface, and then I get a good shine pretty much every time. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you mind if I ask what kind of abrasive paste you're using? Because I know we're going to get questions.
It's a mix that I make. I make pretty much all my own products. Anything that I can, I make myself. And I use a mix of walnut oil. I use a refined white beeswax and a bit of carnauba wax. And then lately, I've also been adding a bit of citrus oil in there just to improve like consistency and shelf life and the smell as well. So
that's awesome. Well, I'm going to have to bug you for the ratios on that as well.
It's super simple. So hit me up. I'm glad to share it.
That's awesome. Maggie asks, how high do you go on the grit before you use sanding sealer?
I find it really depends on the piece. I'll start using sanding sealer in between the lower grits, like 180, 240. I'll start using sanding sealer then. I'll usually go up to 320. And if the piece merits it, like if I'm working on a piece of maybe black walnut or hard maple, I find they really show scratches. So taking it up to 400, sometimes I'll even go as high as 800 if I really need to. But if I can, 320, and usually I'm good. 320 abrasive paste, and then I'm usually good. How about you?
That's excellent. Yeah, that's about where I tend to top out as well. I also tend to keep like nicer sandpaper at the top end, like right about where I'm gonna stop. I'll buy my 180 and 240 on the roll basically, and then I'll use like American Eagle Fin Cat or something like that for the 400 and 600.
You get to a point of diminishing returns where you're getting a nice surface, but you're not going to get one. Like once you put your finish on, you're not going to see a difference between 400 or 800 or whatever. It's after a certain point anyway.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right, well, this has been awesome. This will go up on YouTube. I'll put a link to it in my profile. And Chris, thanks so much, man. I've long admired your work. You took time out of your busy schedule, not just today, but when I was just getting back into turning to answer some questions for me. I've never forgotten it. I really appreciate it, and I love your work. And it's just I'm just tickled pink to have you on.
I'm gonna bug you about the Rose engine at some point. I'm so curious.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
All right, man. Take care. You have a good night.
Thank you, everybody, for joining in, and we'll see you all later this week. All right, take it easy, Chris.
Okay. Bye.